Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the Chelaram Diabetes Institute for inviting my husband and me. This is our 4th year here. We've been attending every session. We'll keep it short and quick, and I'm not going to give any answers. I'm going to ask all of you to give answers. So, Anjali, please go ahead.
Yes. So while she's preparing, मराठी बोलू शकते मी. माहेरी आल्यासारखं जो फील येतो, that you are coming back to your mother's place. I had very wonderful time with Unni sir, Veda, Rajesh sir, and the whole team of CDI, and it feels great to be here. I had been very actively working on these protocols when I was with Chelaram, and it's good to know that we are discussing on protocol. Now that we're talking about precision medicine, I think in IPD the guidelines are much more difficult than in OPD. But at the same time,
Dr. Anjali is our former employee. She's just being humbled when she says that she was been working on the protocol. Our entire in-hospital protocol was created by her. So she's actually set up the protocol, and so I said it's very fair that she should be presenting it.
thank you so much, sir. It's an immense motivation from a person like Unni sir, which makes you be able to do such kind of thing. Thank you so much for giving me that opportunity, sir. As we were going ahead, forming protocols in IPD is not as easy as forming protocols in OPD. But at the same time, I think it's a very important window of opportunity for us to understand our patient. I mean, I think the precision medicine or individualized medicine that we talk about today is best possible in an IPD patient, right? And in IPD patient, again, we have categories of patients where the patient is very sick, admitted only for the sickness. And we do have patients who are getting admitted just for the glycemic control, right? So these two patients, I think, should be approached in different manner. If we are admitting a patient only for sickness, then the regimen can change, we can manage the sickness, and the previous regimen can go back with the patient. But I am sure you all have patients who are getting admitted just for management of glycemia, or maybe a minor illness, but majorly for management of hyperglycemia. In those cases, I think it is important to understand that whatever we are starting may be considered in terms of what we are going to continue after the patient is discharged. So the similar case that would be presenting, but before that, I think you are Preeti, right? Nikita, sorry. So would you like to explain what you did, Nikita?
So I took 50 ml syringe, and if you're taking 40 IU vial, you have to choose 40 IU syringe, which is in a red color. So I took 40 unit of insulin with 39 ml of normal saline.
That would make 1 unit per ml of the fluid. So that will make our corrections or the calculations easy.
And I have primed the tubing with the infusion, and I'll be starting priming dose according to the blood sugar level. So whatever the blood sugar level, I have to prime the dose, and I have to just give the bolus from the syringe pump.
One question I have, sorry to interrupt. Do you use human albumin to prevent the insulin from adhering to the tubules? Because in US we do. For most hospitals, we use human albumin in the mixture to prevent the insulin from sticking to the plastic. But that may not be necessary here.
Yeah, this is one practice that is recommended, but I don't think here we use it as a protocol. We don't do that. We just try to flush off the initial portion of the syringe or the plastic to avoid this, and I think we don't use this as a protocol.
That's fine. Absolutely.
So if the sugar is 300, we have to give 3 ml of bolus and then start 3 units per hour. So now I have selected 3 units, and now I'm going to start this infusion. So 3 units has been delivered. So now it will be starting as of 3 units per hour till the next sugar you have recorded.
Okay, so it's great to have the actual demonstration of what, though it's done by nurses, I think many a times when we are asked as a troubleshooter, we must know what exactly to be done. As a resident, I think we have dealt with the pump and all that. But it's good to revise as to what to do if troubleshooting is required. Thank you, Nikita. So, as I said, this is going to be a case again where we are going to decide what regimen is right, what we are going to give after discharge, how to manage the patient in hospital. A simple case of a 68-year-old gentleman known, may I ask you to come forward? So,
don't worry, we'll come.
So, known to have diabetes since 20 years, also has hypertension, dyslipidemia, and diabetes-related microvascular complications in terms of non-proliferative diabetes, retinopathy, as well as diagnosed to have chronic kidney disease since last 1 year. And now he is hospitalized for a non-healing wound on his foot since last 1 month and secondary to a shoe bite. Now there are multiple things that we need to discuss in this patient. What he is already on is a premixed insulin, which is, as sir rightly said, a very, very commonly used insulin. Even though on dialysis and on the conferences stages, we talk about basal bolus, basal bolus, basal bolus. The fact remains that still in the OPDs, premixed insulin remains the most commonly used insulin in patients who need insulin at any point of time. He is also on linagliptin, telmisartan, and amlodipine and atorvastatin. He has some signs of infection. About the foot care, we are not going in details because I'm sure there is a dedicated session on how to manage the foot part of the patient's requirements, healthcare needs. But what we will go ahead with is what we are going to do with his glycemic levels. Now, his current blood glucose is 278. HbA1c is 8.5. With that, we would like to know that the creatinine is 2.6. And he also has increased WBC counts, which suggests that he has infection. Now, the diagnosis remains like this: diabetes, hypertension, diabetic kidney disease, and diabetic foot. Now, this is what the other treatment, which includes offloading, foot care, antibiotics, and all. Coming to the glucose monitoring chart prior to hospitalization, this is what the patient had already monitored before coming to the hospital. So the fasting blood glucose was 78, after breakfast was 294, before lunch is 176, after lunch is 234. Then 5 p.m. he had an hypoglycemia with 56. He was given sweets at that time. The before dinner went up to 192 and the post dinner is 312. So here comes what do we do. I would like to take opinions from our experts as well as from the forum that those who are using premixed insulin as a common insulin in their OPD, how, if they would like to go ahead with premixed insulin, they would change the doses. Anybody who is using premixed insulin very commonly?
Yes, so we want the audience to participate. We will be passive observers. So.
Sir, I would request everyone to please come here on the mic because it's important for us to listen, not only me, for everyone it's important to listen what you are saying. Please, sir, please come here. And those who are using premixed insulin, what would, if they decide to continue, because diabetes is a holy grail that we were discussing, anything can be right, anything can be wrong.
I think one comment I would have that, as you could see from what Dr. Bhatt presented, that the outpatient glucose profile already had hypoglycemia in the middle part of the afternoon. That is not surprising with the use of premixed insulin, even in the outpatient situation in a patient with renal disease.
Right.
Morning premixed insulin may be changed to 50-50 and evening 30-70.
Morning premixed insulin to be changed to 50-50 and evening would change to 30-70.
Post-lunch sugar is controlled and the evening sugar is down. That may be taken care of. So,
but here would, sir, what would you do with the fasting hypoglycemia that's happening? How would that get prevented? Right. So, yeah, any other choice?
Any other
choice?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Firstly, I will stop all the oral drugs.
Okay.
Then number two, we will use only rapid-acting insulins and monitoring the blood sugar with every meal.
Sure. So as sir rightly said that it's very difficult to manage the hyper roller coaster with premixed insulin. It doesn't go with the saying that premixed insulin has no role, but when you are dealing with a patient with hypo and hyper roller coaster, it's very difficult to manage with premixed, and the patient should be shifted to a different regimen. Now we have other possibilities with these regimens.
Who would continue to use NPH insulin in this situation, even as an outpatient in someone with renal failure?
Right. So
Very few, very few.
right.
Okay.
So we have when we stop premixed, we have another options of basal and bolus, right? So as rightly sir said, if we want to choose basal bolus, which basal would you like to prefer, and which premix, pre-meal insulin that you would like to prefer in patients with CKD? So what is your opinion, sir? Which is the basal insulin that you prefer in patients with renal impairment?
Again, cost is important even in the US.
Right.
So usually in the US, in patients with renal disease, in such situations, we prefer glargine and aspart or Humalog. Right. So the simplest
Yes.
regimen,
Yes.
which is cost effective, should be used.
Ma'am, which would be the pre-meal insulin of your choice in patients with CKD? Is it regular insulin or analog or even ultra-fast acting analogs that have come up now?
I would use the simple analogs.
Simple analogs?
Again, we need to be careful because in patients with renal disease, the peak is prolonged and
Correct.
the duration of action is prolonged.
Right.
So we have to be very careful.
Right.
And in these situations, really, although continuous glucose monitoring has not yet been approved in patients with renal disease, but we're actually testing it out in our patients at UVA, along with Dr. Guillermo Ampierrez at Emory. We are doing both inpatient and outpatient studies, looking at the accuracy and the validity of CGM use in such patients.
Right. So you would prefer analog over regular insulins in patients with renal impairment? Right. Yes.
When you give the action of short-acting insulins are always more prolonged, as you rightly pointed out. So in these situations, the amount of basal insulin that you require is very, very low. And at times, you may not require a basal insulin because the tailing effect of the short-acting insulin works as a basal insulin. So you may actually just get away with giving only short-acting insulin, others type 1. So you may just require only a short-acting, and that may have a prolonged action, which may work as a basal insulin for the patient.
Even though we don't use it now, like Andy said, we are starting studies where we're going to put CGMS on these patients, so it'll give us a better idea of their profile. We can perhaps have a more educated guess.
Correct.
In the
Sure.
future.
Yeah.
Sure. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So just to highlight, I request Dr. Veda, because we have a lot of patients on dialysis in our hospital and they are on insulin. And Dr. Veda, what do we do in those patients? Even if they are admitted, if they go for dialysis, how do we manage the sugars?
Yes, we have published one paper. Dr. Rajesh is one of the main authors. So when patients are on dialysis, definitely we know that during dialysis, the glucose levels, they fall off because the glucose is taken out in the dialyzer. So we usually ask patients to skip the morning dose of insulin if they are supposed to be on dialysis in the morning hours. So any rapid-acting insulin prior to dialysis, we ask patients to stop. And usually those patients are pretty controlled on more of prandial insulin. So basal insulin, as sir told, the basal requirement would be just 10-20% and more 70-80% would be just prandial insulins in CKD patients, because in them, the post-prandial hikes are more.
Dr. Rajesh, would you like to comment on your published paper? We published it together, the use of ambulatory glucose profile in dialysis patients, and would you like to comment on that?
So the problem with CKD patients who are on dialysis is the glucose profile is very variable. The day of dialysis, the sugars can go low during the dialysis. After dialysis, once they have a hypoglycemia during dialysis, you can have a hyperglycemia. So when you use a CGM in such patients, you can actually look at the glucose profile of that patient, which helps you to monitor the sugars and understand whether a prandial insulin would be necessary just or a basal insulin. So I think a use of what we did studied in a small pilot study with 10 patients on CKD on hemodialysis, and we found that majority had hypoglycemias during dialysis. So, which was in fact sometimes even life-threatening. So, use of CGM has definitely helped us to look at the glucose profile.
Just a point that you need to remember is insulin is dialyzable. So the moment you dialyze a patient, the insulin is out of the circulation, and which is why you get post-dialysis hyperglycemic surge. So you always need to give insulin post-dialysis and not before dialysis, so that you don't get this hyperglycemic
So
surge.
what happens is that the glucose and the insulin both have a different molecular weight. In fact, insulin is a much more higher molecular weight substance. So when you use a dialyzer, you have a low flux and a high flux dialyzer. The high flux dialyzers are the ones which actually filter the insulin out, but the low flux doesn't do that. But yes, glucose does get filtered out during dialysis, and the hypo will for next cause hyperglycemia after the dialysis is over.
I just want to add one practical point. So during dialysis, there may be hypoglycemia. Post-dialysis, there may be hyperglycemia. But remember, the next day also, what we studied is even on the day after dialysis, the blood glucose continues to be a little low. And the next day, you might like to reduce the basal insulin dose on the day after dialysis. So on the day of dialysis, you might be worried about intradialytic hypoglycemia, post-dialysis hyperglycemia. But the day after dialysis, the blood sugar can go low in the basal, the fasting blood sugar, so you might like to reduce the basal on the day after dialysis. So over to you.
Absolutely. I think the holy grail of mechanics of insulin resistance and insulin requirement becomes even deeper when you develop chronic kidney disease. Because in the initial periods of chronic kidney disease, the patient will have more insulin resistance and might require more insulin versus what we think that CKD would reduce the insulin requirement by not being able to excrete the insulin. And this becomes even problematic when the patient is on dialysis, because you are actually playing with the molecular levels of the pathophysiology of diabetes. I think there was also one suggestion when Dr. Rajesh was working on this project, was that we give glucose during the time of dialysis to prevent the counteracting hyperglycemia after the dialysis and the hypoglycemia that occurs the next day. So we don't have to always restrict the glucose. During the dialysis, we can ask the patient to eat well or give glucose during the dialysis to prevent the mechanics from getting too much disturbed.
And also it depends on what is the content and composition of the dialysate fluid.
Absolutely.
In the US, most of the dialysate fluids contain glucose.
Yeah. Yes. Do contain glucose?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay,
they do, even in patients with diabetes. So we have to take that into consideration as well.
Correct. And I think at many places we practice not having glucose in the dialysis, which may not be probably right, even in patients with diabetes.
Most of the dialysate fluids are non-glucose-based dialysis. So especially patients who are prone to hypoglycemia, you may think of using. But there's only a small problem, is that there's a high chances of having an infection if you have a glucose-based dialysis. That's the only thing.
Great. So very important points from the practical aspects. So having discussed about the insulin choice, would you like to continue the linagliptin?
Who would?
Now, again,
who would
yes,
continue
please,
linagliptin?
We want a vote. It's coming up now. Oral anti-diabetes medicine during hospitalized patient is something which is coming up. Only few.
Okay, I'm happy to see that. There's only a few. Okay, because, in my mind, maybe I'm biased, because the diabetic patient in the US may be different than the diabetic patient in India. But frankly, gliptins, in my mind, are wimpy drugs. Their average lowering of hemoglobin A1C in the outpatient is about 0.5%. So our use is pretty restricted.
Right. So sir would not like to continue with linagliptin,
Yeah,
and
I
I
would
think
stop.
yes, both sir and ma'am, and I think
Keep it simple.
whole,
Yes.
Hall says that we would like to discontinue linagliptin in this patient. Would you like to restart it when the patient is discharged?
Well, if you think that, the gliptins have contributed to his or her glucose control, maybe.
Right. So it's very individualized, and we must use our discretion to use or discontinue the medicine. So this is what we had discussed, that he was started on basal bolus therapy. The previous dose was 54, but because he was getting recurrent hypoglycemia, the total dose was reduced by 20%. And here glargine was given as 15 and aspart was given as 10, 10, 10. So 30 units of short-acting insulin and 15 units of the basal insulin. We can always keep changing the proportion, but The question here was, should the proportion of basal bolus be different in patients with impaired renal function? So yes.
I think that was already discussed by Dr.
So
Agarwal, yes.
keep the basal or longer acting insulins in lesser proportion compared to the shorter acting insulins when you are dealing with a patient with renal impairment. So should we avoid? Yes, we should avoid. That doesn't mean we don't use basal if it's required. If the insulin resistance is so high that the fasting is very high, we can definitely use. There is no absolute contraindication to use a basal insulin. So the next day's chart is like this. Fasting was 123, after breakfast 210, before lunch 145, after lunch 198, before dinner 102, and after dinner 199.
So
how many of...
One question I have for the audience. For this patient in the inpatient situation, what should be a glucose target? Right. What range?
So how many of you are okay with this chart and would not like to change? And how many would like to intensify the therapy? Okay, so I think 50-50 of the audience are saying...
So what should be the glucose target? Should it be 100 to 150? Anybody says yes? Raise the hand. Okay, 140 to 180. Okay, okay. 150 to 250. Doctor, the presenter herself says 150 to 250. Okay.
Right. So looking at the chart, what I would think, obviously, apart from the guidelines, every physician has his own thinking, own discretion. They know the patients better than the guidelines do. So when let's ask. Right. Anybody from the stricter control group would like to come up and explain why, what is the thought of
keeping the sugars between 100 to 150.
Flow of thought over this.
Yeah, about 120 and 180 in view of his diabetic foot.
Yes, of course.
So you're saying that you want to keep it below 200. Okay, and the reason is because of the infection. Because again, studies have suggested that a glucose of over 200 or 220 milligrams per deciliter reduces the phagocytic functions of the leukocytes. Hence, you want to keep the blood sugars below 200 or below 220.
Yes, absolutely. So that was the next point when I said that I can be okay with 250 if there was no infection, right? So because in this patient we are discussing the fact that the patient also has a condition where CKD needs less strict targets to avoid hypoglycemia that we have seen in this patient even on OPD basis, and need a slightly strict target to make sure that the infection outcomes are not poor, right? So as Sir rightly said, we kept the target as before meals around 120, maybe plus minus 20, and after meals around 180 plus minus 20. So that could be a very reasonable target to look for in this patient.
Anyone who disagrees with this?
We would be happy if someone disagrees and explains.
Well, this is looking good. Okay.
Great. Now the patient is planned for discharge. So maybe the IV antibiotic was given, the foot care was given, the patient is ready to go home. And now this patient is back to CKD and with no infection, right? So as I said, the shorter duration where we needed to control the infection would be the reason for inpatient hyperglycemia, and now we discharge the patient. Would you like to continue basal bolus that was going on in the hospital, or would you like to shift the patient to premix that he was taking?
Who would want to continue on basal bolus?
Okay. This is basal bolus?
Yes.
Right.
And who would want to continue on premixed? Okay, so more for basal bolus and less for premixed. I'm happy to hear that. Sure. But at the same time, as Dr. Unni mentioned before, cost is important. So again, a discussion with the patient as to the affordability of basal bolus versus premix is very important in India and definitely important in the US until we get universal health care.
Yes.
So I just want to make this point that, it's always more fashionable to say that we like basal bolus. Basal bolus is the best. Basal bolus is everything. But there are some problems with basal bolus. One is that you have to inject 4 times a day. Second is you have to monitor pretty commonly. How many of our Indian patients are going to monitor? As ma'am said, the price of a glucometer strip is also high. The third thing to consider is if a patient has, you're going to discharge the patient has advanced renal failure, let's assume the patient has CKD, has got retinopathy, has got neuropathy, and is prone for hypoglycemia, and if on basal bolus insulin, patient cannot afford the monitoring strips. And if the patient finds it too complicated to take basal bolus, because you have to do some carbohydrate counting, check your pre-meal, keep on injecting, tell me how many of your patients can do pre-meal sugars every day and check their glucose and check the carbohydrates? How many of your patients can do? Not a single person. How many of your patients can't do all this? How many of your patients can't do 4 times monitoring? So I think there is a role. I mean, let's not say that basal bolus is the best, everybody knows. There is a role for premix in India because it's convenient. It is same injection 2 times a day. And once a patient, you are really wanting to make it something simple for the patient, there is a role if patient is controlled. But I agree, the gold standard is basal bolus. Yes, Dr. Sanjay?
Just want to to go back to your initial glucose profile. If you clearly see here, all your glucose is all prandial glucose that is high. It's all postprandial glucose that is elevated. Second point, his admission A1C is 8.5. So clearly this patient was uncontrolled when he came into the hospital with an 8.5 A1C. And here you're seeing that all the initial glucose values are all postprandial increase that the patient is getting. In this sort of a situation, you always look at what the GFR of the patient is. If the patient has got a very low GFR, you don't need to give a basal. You can just give only twice a day short-acting insulin, which will still work very well, or supplement with the 3 times a day short-acting without any basal. If your GFR is, stage 1 or stage 2 kidney disease, where the patient still got adequate renal function, in them probably you need to add a basal insulin along with the prandial insulin to the patient.
Sure. So I think we would conclude the session by saying that every regimen has its place. Look at your patients. Even though in the wards, OPD, we know that patients cannot monitor. In the IPD, take the chance to monitor the blood glucose and then decide whether the patient can go back to premix. And as far as possible, I think the first norm in these patients is to prevent hypoglycemia. And if you achieve that, I think a slightly less stricter target for the post-meal should be okay. Yes. Right. Sure. Yes, absolutely.
So a very good point was
rightly
regarding the changing diet in patients with renal disease. They go to low protein, high carb diet.
Sure. We have
excuse me.
few more cases now to discuss.
Can I ask one question? If the wound is healing well, in addition to basal, in place of prandial insulin, can we consider repaglinide?
Okay, I think we'll take that question later, but in general, I would say that stick to insulin till the wound has healed. The wound is healing, then I think stick to insulin. Once the wound has healed, you can think of several options, including repaglinide. Remember, our topic is in-hospital glucose control. I'd like to thank Dr. Anjali for a wonderful lecture. Thank you. Please give her a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to, Dr. Andy Basu and Dr. Rita Basu, please stay here.